The digital mirage, the 40-year war for your dashboard, the 1986 time machine, a premature future. To understand why your modern car feels like a smartphone, we have to travel back to 1986. At the time, the automotive world was defined by tactile feedback. Every function, from the wipers to the radio, was tied to a physical switch, a slider, or a clicking knob. But at General Motors, a group of futurist engineers wanted to break the mold. They introduced the 1986 Buick Riviera featuring the Graphic Control Center, GCC. This wasn't just a screen, it was a high-voltage, 9-inch cathode ray tube, CRT, monitor. Literally a heavy glass television set embedded into the center console. It replaced 80 individual physical controls with a series of digital pages. The technology behind it was fascinating yet flawed. It used an infrared touch grid. When your finger approached the glass, it broke invisible light beams to register a press. The graphics were ambitious. The fan icon would actually spin at different speeds to visually represent the climate control. It had trip computers, electronic gauges, and a diagnostic suite. But the reality was a nightmare. The CRT took time to warm up. The infrared sensors were easily confused by sunlight or a light layer of dust, leading to ghost touches, where the car would seemingly change its own settings. Car and Driver magazine famously torched the design, calling it a bad joke that turned a trip to the convenience store into a frustrating space odyssey. By 1990, the public had spoken. Buick ripped the screens out and returned to buttons. For 20 years, the industry agreed, touchscreens were a failed experiment. The Silicon Valley Coup, Tesla and the iPhone-ification of the road. The silence lasted until 2012. While the Big Three in Detroit were perfecting the soft touch button, a startup in Silicon Valley was rethinking the car from the ground up. The Tesla Model S arrived with a 17-inch vertical tablet that controlled everything. This was the iPhone moment for the automotive industry. Tesla didn't just add a screen, they marketed a lifestyle of minimalism. They convinced the world that a dashboard cluttered with buttons was old-fashioned and analog. Suddenly, traditional giants like Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and Ford looked like they were selling rotary phones in an era of high-speed data. But behind the marketing of minimalism was a cold, hard financial truth that automakers rarely discuss: profit margins. A physical dashboard is an engineering marvel and a manufacturing headache. It requires hundreds of individual plastic molds, separate light bulbs for every button, miles of copper wiring to connect every switch, and mechanical components that must be tested to survive 20 years of vibrations and extreme temperatures. A touch screen, however, is a single, off-the-shelf component. By moving 100 functions into one screen, manufacturers saved hundreds of dollars per vehicle in labor and parts. They rebranded cost-cutting as innovation, and the consumer unknowingly paid a premium for it. The 2018 mandate, the death of choice. While Tesla set the trend, it was a government regulation in 2018 that made the touchscreen inevitable. The United States mandated that all new cars must be equipped with rear-view cameras to prevent back-over accidents involving pedestrians and children. This regulation changed the math for every car company on Earth. Since every car was now legally required to have a screen for the camera, designers faced a choice. Keep the expensive physical buttons for the AC and radio plus the screen, or just move the AC and radio onto the screen they were already forced to install. To save money, they chose the latter. This wasn't a choice made for the driver, it was a choice made for the balance sheet. By 2020, we entered the screen era. Functions that were once second nature, like opening a glove box or adjusting a side mirror, were buried 3 menus deep. We transitioned from being drivers, who felt the car, to operators, who had to navigate software while traveling at lethal speeds. The cognitive toll, the science of distraction. To understand why this transition is more than just an annoyance, we have to look at cognitive load. When you use a button, your brain utilizes haptic memory. You don't need to look at the volume knob because your hand knows exactly where it is. You feel the click. Your eyes stay on the road. A touchscreen has no texture. It is a smooth sheet of glass. This forces a visual manual task. The search. Your eyes must leave the road to find the icon. The aim. Because the car is moving and vibrating, you have to stabilize your hand to hit a small digital target. The confirmation. You have to look again to see if the screen actually registered your touch. The lethal math. At 65 miles per hour, your car covers about 95 feet per second. If a simple task, like lowering the temperature, takes 4 seconds on a screen versus 1 second on a dial, you have traveled the length of a football field essentially blindfolded. Phase 1 concludes with a chilling realization. The industry traded the driver's muscle memory for a digital mirage, and as we move into Phase 2, we will see how this philosophy shifted from being inconvenient to being deadly. The death of intuition, handles, shifters, and the cost of confusion, the era of the stupid shifter. For decades, the PRNDL, park, reverse, neutral, drive, low configuration was the industry standard. Whether you drove a Ford or a Ferrari, you knew how to put the car in gear. It was a physical lever that stayed in the position you moved it to. You didn't need to look. You could feel the mechanical clunk as the transmission engaged. But in the early 2010s, a trend called the monostable shifter began to infect the luxury market. Unlike traditional levers, these shifters always return to the center position after you move them. To put the car in park, you often have to press a separate button or push the lever forward and wait for a light to blink. There is no physical detent to tell your brain the car is secure. This wasn't just a learning curve, it was a design flaw. In 2016, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, investigated over 600 complaints of roll-away incidents involving these shifters. Drivers thought they were in park, stepped out of the vehicle, and the car simply rolled away. The most high-profile victim of this design was actor Anton Yelchin. In June 2016, his Jeep Grand Cherokee, equipped with one of these confusing monostable shifters, rolled down his driveway and pinned him against a brick pillar. He was only 27 years old. While Fiat Chrysler had already issued a recall, the fix was a software update, not a return to a safe, physical lever. This tragedy highlighted a dark truth. When you replace 100 years of muscle memory with a cool, digital interface, the margin for human error disappears. The genesis of absurdity. The crystal sphere. If the monostable shifter was a mistake, the Genesis GV60's crystal sphere is a monument to over-engineering. When the car is off, a glowing glass orb sits in the center console like a piece of modern art. When you start the car, the sphere mechanically rotates 180 degrees to reveal a rotary shift dial. Genesis claims this creates an emotional connection and serves as a safety feature, so you know the car is truly on. But consider the reality. It is a complex mechanical motor, a cooling fan, and a light system just to perform the task of a simple lever. If that motor fails, or if a piece of grit gets stuck in the mechanism, you cannot put your car in gear. To explain how to use this intuitive feature, Genesis had to release a 4-minute instructional video. If a gear shifter requires a documentary to explain it, the design has failed. The hidden door handle, a cold reality. The obsession with clean lines led designers to the next victim, the door handle. Traditionally, a handle was a mechanical lever. Even if the car's battery died, the door opened. Today, we have flush mount handles, Tesla, Range Rover, Mercedes, that stay hidden inside the door body until the car senses the key. While these look futuristic and slightly improve aerodynamics, adding perhaps 1 to 2 miles of range, they ignore the laws of physics, specifically ice. In climates like Canada, Norway, or the northern US, freezing rain can coat a car in a layer of ice. When a motorized handle tries to pop out against an inch of solid ice, the motor can burn out, or the handle can snap. More terrifyingly, there is the emergency factor. In a crash, every second counts. If a car's electrical system is compromised during an accident, these handles may not deploy. First responders, firefighters, and police often rely on grabbing a handle to pull a door open. With flush handles, there is nothing to grab. You are trapped inside a digital box, waiting for a sensor to tell a motor to let you out. The software-defined safety gap. Finally, we look at the removal of the regenerative braking toggle. In older electric vehicles, you could choose how much the car slowed down when you let off the gas. In 2020, Tesla removed the option to turn this high regen off. For a driver on a steep, icy mountain road, this is a nightmare. In a traditional car, you want to coast or brake gently to maintain traction. In a Tesla with forced regen, the moment you lift your foot to adjust your speed, the car brakes hard using the motor. On ice, This can break traction and send the car into a spin. Because there is no physical button to disable it, drivers find themselves frantically digging through 3 layers of touchscreen menus while sliding toward a cliff. The data Hoover. Your car is watching you. The privacy nightmare. 25 out of 25. In 2023, the Mozilla Foundation, a global nonprofit focused on internet privacy, conducted a massive study on 25 of the world's leading car brands. Their conclusion was staggering. Every single one of them failed. Cars were ranked as the worst product category for privacy that the Foundation had ever reviewed. While we worry about our phones tracking our location, our cars are doing much more. Because a car is a private space where you spend hours talking, singing, and traveling, it has access to data that a phone in your pocket might miss. The study found that automakers reserve the right to collect biometric data, your fingerprints, the shape of your face, and even the gait of your walk as you approach the vehicle. Genetic information. Several privacy policies mention the right to collect genetic characteristics. Personal beliefs. Your religious views, political affiliations, and even whether you belong to a union. The most intimate details. Most shockingly, brands like Nissan and Kia explicitly mention in their privacy policies that they can collect information about your sexual activity and sex life. How does a car know this? It doesn't necessarily watch you in that way, but it aggregates data from your connected phone, your GPS destinations, like clinics or specific social spots, and your voice recordings to build a psychological profile of you that they can then sell to advertisers or insurance companies. The Tesla office meme scandal. The sensors that make self-driving and safety assist possible are cameras, lots of them. The Tesla Model Y, for example, has up to 9 cameras. One of them is located inside the cabin, right above the rear-view mirror. Tesla tells its customers that these cameras are for safety and that privacy is built in. However, in 2023, a Reuters investigation revealed a disturbing culture within Tesla offices between 2019 and 2022. Former employees admitted to sharing private videos and images captured by customer cars on internal messaging systems. These weren't just traffic data clips. They included road rage, videos of crashes and heated arguments. Private moments. One video reportedly showed a man approaching his car completely naked in his own garage. Memes. Employees would take mundane or embarrassing clips of owners and turn them into office memes. The most surreal revelation. Employees found footage of a unique submersible vehicle from a James Bond movie parked in a garage. The owner of that garage was Elon Musk himself. If the CEO's own privacy wasn't protected from his employees, what hope does the average driver have? The insurance trap. Driving data for sale. Perhaps the most direct way this data collection hurts you is through your wallet. Many modern cars, like those from GM, Ford, and Honda, have opt-in features that supposedly score your driving to help you save on insurance. However, many drivers don't realize they've opted in when they click Accept on a 50-page terms and conditions screen. Companies like LexisNexis and Verisk act as data brokers, buying telematics data from car manufacturers. This includes how hard you brake, how fast you accelerate, every time you go even 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, whether you drive late at night, which is considered high risk. In 2024, reports surfaced of drivers seeing their insurance premiums spike by 50% to 100% because their car had snitched on their driving habits. A simple trip to the grocery store where you had to slam on your brakes because of a squirrel could literally cost you hundreds of dollars in increased premiums, all because your car's sensors are constantly reporting back to the mothership. The Inform Your Passengers clause. Automakers are so aware of how invasive this is that they've started shifting the legal burden onto you. Nissan's privacy policy, for instance, states that it is the owner's responsibility to inform any passengers that the car is collecting their data. Imagine picking up a friend for lunch and having to say, "Before you get in, you should know this car is recording your voice, tracking our location, and potentially selling your personal data to third-party brokers." No one does this. But by putting it in the fine print, the car company protects itself from lawsuits, leaving the driver legally exposed. Consent or inoperability. The final insult to privacy is the illusion of choice. While companies like Tesla allow you to opt out of data collection, the fine print warns that doing so may result in reduced functionality or even inoperability of the vehicle. You paid $50,000 for a car, but if you don't want it to spy on you, the manufacturer reserves the right to disable the features you paid for. This isn't a consumer product anymore. It's a data extraction platform that happens to have 4 wheels. The mile-long blindfold. The physics of distraction. The screen mile phenomenon. To understand the danger of modern car interiors, we have to look at a groundbreaking study conducted by a leading Swedish automotive magazine. They compared 11 modern, touchscreen-heavy cars against a 17-year-old Volvo with traditional buttons. The task was simple: adjust the climate control and change the radio station while driving at 110 km per hour, approximate 70 miles per hour. In the old Volvo, it took the driver 10 seconds. In that time, the car traveled 306 meters. In the worst modern car, the same task took 44.6 seconds. Think about that number. In the time it took to perform a basic adjustment on a screen, the car traveled 1,372 meters, nearly a full mile. During that mile, the driver's eyes were darting back and forth, and their cognitive focus was on a menu, not the road. Effectively, the driver traveled a mile while blinded by their own dashboard. Worse than drunk driving. The UK's Transport Research Laboratory, TRL, conducted a study that sent shockwaves through the industry. They measured reaction times for drivers using systems like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto via touchscreens and compared them to drivers under the influence of alcohol or cannabis. The findings were terrifying. Alcohol, reaction times slowed by 12%. Cannabis, reaction times slowed by 21%. Touchscreen, Apple CarPlay/Android Auto reaction times plummeted by over 50%. When selecting music on a screen, drivers were reacting slower than if they were at the legal limit for alcohol. Their lane keeping worsened, and their ability to maintain a safe distance from the car in front failed. Yet, while society rightly treats drunk driving as a crime, automakers continue to market these distraction machines as premium features. The near miss of professional drivers. Even experts aren't immune. In early 2024, Kelly Funkhauser, a top vehicle technology director for Consumer Reports, was test driving a modern electric SUV. When traffic slowed down, she attempted a quick flick of the shifter to ensure the cruise control was off. Because she held the gesture for just 1 or 2 seconds too long, the SUV's software misinterpreted the command. Suddenly, at highway speeds, the car shifted into reverse. While the car's safety software prevented the gears from shredding, the vehicle began backing up toward traffic behind her. If a professional who tests cars for a living can be confused by these fiddly controls, what hope does a tired parent or a distracted teenager have? The death of the second rule. For generations, driving instructors taught the 2-second rule: stay 2 seconds behind the car in front. Safety experts at the AAA Foundation for Traffic Safety note that taking your eyes off the road for more than 2 seconds doubles your risk of a crash. However, modern infotainment tasks, like entering a destination into a navigation system, take an average of 40 seconds on a native car screen. That is 20 times the safe limit. By the time the driver looks back up, the world has changed. A child has stepped into the street, a truck has slammed on its brakes, or the road has curved. The safety sensors and auto-braking are marketed as a safety net, but they are often just a band-aid for a distracted environment created by the manufacturers themselves. Phase 4 Conclusion. A statistical U-turn. Since the 1970s, motor vehicle deaths in the US and Europe were on a steady decline due to better engineering and seatbelts. But around 2011, the exact year smartphones and large touchscreens began their mass-market takeover of the car, that trend reversed. Deaths began to climb. In 2023 alone, 45,000 people died on U.S. roads. Professor David Strayer, a leading expert on driver distraction, sums it up perfectly. Something is going on that is making our roads less safe, and it corresponds exactly with the increased prevalence of electronics in the vehicle. We are living in an era where the car is actively fighting the driver for their attention. As we move into Phase 5, we will see the great backlash. How governments and consumers are finally fighting back to bring the buttons home. The Great Backlash. The Return of the Button. The 2026 Mandate. Regulating Common Sense. The most significant turning point in this story didn't come from a car company, but from an influential non-profit called the European New Car Assessment Program, Euro NCAP. For decades, Euro NCAP has been the gold standard for safety ratings, A 5-star rating is the ultimate marketing tool for brands like Volvo, BMW, and Tesla. In a landmark announcement, Euro NCAP declared that starting in 2026, any car that wants a 5-star safety rating must have physical controls for 5 core functions: the horn, windshield wipers, turn signals, hazard lights, emergency SOS calls. While this sounds like common sense, it was a direct strike against companies like Tesla, which had moved turn signals and wipers to haptic touchpads on the steering wheel or submenus on the screen. The message was clear: if you force a driver to look at a screen during a rainstorm or an emergency, your car is fundamentally unsafe. Volkswagen's public apology: "We will never do this again." The backlash wasn't just regulatory, it was commercial. Perhaps no company suffered more from the touchscreen craze than Volkswagen. When they launched their electric ID series and the Golf MK8, they replaced almost every button with capacitive touch sliders that didn't light up at night and were notoriously difficult to use. The customer feedback was brutal. Sales slowed, and brand loyalty plummeted. In a rare move for a corporate giant, Volkswagen's head of design, Andreas Meint, issued a public apology in 2024. He admitted the company had made a mistake, stating, "We will never ever make this mistake anymore. On the steering wheel, we will have physical buttons. It's a car, not a phone." Following suit, Honda brought back the physical volume knob after years of infuriating touch sliders, and BMW began phasing out gesture control, a feature that allowed you to wave your hand in the air to change the volume, which most drivers found to be a useless gimmick. The 9 out of 10 statistic. The industry's pivot is being driven by the one thing they can't ignore: the buyer. A 2024 survey of over 1,400 drivers found that 89% of people preferred physical buttons for climate and audio controls. Furthermore, 60% of respondents said they would actively avoid buying a car if it was too digital. For years, automakers thought they were disrupting the market. In reality, they were alienating their customers. The space odyssey, promised by the 1986 Buick Riviera, had finally been put to the test, and the human brain chose the clicking knob over the glowing pixel. The extinction of the affordable car. However, there is a darker side to the high-tech era that won't go away with a few buttons. All these sensors, cameras, and massive screens have driven the price of cars to historic highs. In early 2025, cars costing less than $25,000 made up less than 5% of the market. Manufacturers have realized that software-defined vehicles allow them to sell subscriptions for features you already paid for, like $15 a month for heated seats or $1,200 a year for faster acceleration. Even as the buttons return, the battle for the soul of the car continues. Is your vehicle a tool for freedom, or is it a subscription-based data mining device that you happen to sit in? Conclusion: is the CRT really necessary? As we look back over the 40-year war between the screen and the switch, we are left with the same question asked in 1986. Is the screen really necessary? Technology in a car should be an invisible co-pilot, helping you stay safe and connected. But when the technology becomes the destination, when the magic orb or the 17-inch tablet demands more of your attention than the road, it is no longer progress. It is a hazard. The 2026 Great Backlash proves that while software can be updated, human biology cannot. We are tactile creatures. We need to feel the click of a switch and the turn of a dial to feel in control. The future of the car isn't just about autonomous driving or electric motors. It's about rediscovering the human-machine interface that we should never have abandoned in the first place.